my name is Diana Fox-Carney, and I'm here to welcome you to the 19th Annual Corporate Citizenship Gala, hosted by Corporate Knights, of course. And this is unusual for many reasons. It's obviously the first gala that has been held in this Zoom format. So we're gaining some things perhaps, but missing out on being with each other. But I think the main thing that I want to emphasize that it's taking place at a time of extraordinary change in our world. And we're going to be talking a lot about the agenda for coming out of the economic and personal hardship that the virus has thrust upon us all. And we also have renewed emphasis, of course, on the inclusion and the diversity agenda at this time. So there is a huge amount going on. And we have with us tonight some of the most impressive corporate leaders in Canada. We want to celebrate them and celebrate the future that Canada has before it. So I'm going to start, it's an action-packed day. You'll see loads of people on the screen. We've got a couple of videos. We're gonna have, we're delighted to have the Minister with us. And I will say welcome to everyone who's joining us and to everyone who's joined us for the previous Build Back Better events, which are somehow linked into this. But I would love to pass over now and thank Minister Morneau for being with us today and introducing our event.
Well, thank you, Diana. I'm very happy to be with all of you here virtually. And I've got to say that it's unfortunate that we're not able to share a glass to toast the companies that are being celebrated tonight. I'm certainly hopeful that that will happen in the not too distant future. It is, however, obviously great to be able to recognize all of the companies that have that are going to be recognized tonight and the good work that Corporate Knights has been doing as well. I know the discussions are going to be broad-ranging, but I think they'll be focused on the social and environmental sustainability goals that we are all trying to achieve, and to the promotion and adoption of those goals across the economy, and how important that work is for all of us, both for today and for tomorrow. From my perspective, I think it's worthwhile taking a little bit of a step back and talking about the last couple of months and how important the Canadian economic resilience has been to supporting not only Canadians, but organizations, and enabling us to continue on some of the important work that the organizations represented tonight are able to do. We know it's been a particularly challenging time. It's been challenging for individuals, for businesses, for governments, and we've obviously been working together to try to support each other. We've seen an enormous amount of work in the business community, mobilizing resources for adaptation to our new normal. Obviously, some businesses stepping forward to help us with things like personal protective equipment and medical equipment in ways that really we couldn't have predicted would have been necessary before this crisis. And many of them have stepped forward to make significant financial contributions as well. So we've seen some pretty impressive corporate citizenship over the course of the last few months. And we know that the next period of time will be equally and perhaps more challenging in many ways as we adapt to our new situation. The economic impacts of the pandemic have been severe. The government obviously has stepped forward. And in Canada, I think we're all proud to see that we've had the capability to step forward to support people. We took an approach that was about our health first and foremost, and in collaboration with the provinces have seen an ability to manage the health challenges in a way that is commensurate with our strong healthcare system and our expectations. But we've also supported people in a way that's really unprecedented. People will know that the emergency response benefit, the CERB, or the Prestation Canadienne d'Urgence, has been the critical issue supporting people. But I don't know that everyone would realize just how many people have used it. About 8 million Canadians at its peak have been on it. And we've essentially filled the economic gap for, in particular for the people at the bottom end of the income scale who've been disproportionately impacted by the challenge of COVID-19. And that, that really has been critical in finding our way through this first step. The real challenge, of course, is that those economic impacts have been very disproportionately impacting our most vulnerable, women and young people. So the CERB benefit, the PCU, has been the way that we've been able to support people. And that's really been broad-based across the economy, including people in nonprofits, people in the arts and culture sector, many people, and we have more than 5 million people in our country out of 19 million that are not attached to an employer. And so supporting them has been critically important. The wage subsidy for people, I've spent a lot of time looking at our approach versus other countries. We've really taken a very aggressive approach to trying to ensure that firms get support to keep their workers employed. And right now I'm looking at how we're going to extend that wage subsidy to make sure it's helping employers that are hit hard, as well as employers that are trying to get back to work in a way that makes sense. So that's really about us trying to find a bridge for companies to get through a particularly challenging time. I think everyone on this phone will know also that we've wanted to make sure that we're supporting businesses with credit. One of the things that we've been most pleased with is the support for small businesses that need to get through a tough time. We've now hit more than 680,000 loans that have gone out to our smallest of businesses, and that's unprecedented in scale, and helping an enormous number of our business so that we essentially still have street fronts as we get through this pandemic, and businesses that support us in our day-to-day lives. But for businesses on this call tonight, and for those companies that have been doing so much for sustainability, I think what we've done around the large employer emergency financial facility is most critical. We've put in place this facility to help those large businesses that are experiencing credit challenges or who might experience credit challenges. And we made, as part of that, a decision that they needed to make a commitment to publish annual climate-related disclosure reports, which was an important recommendation that we got from the Financial Stability Board's Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosure. We wanted to use this opportunity to ensure that we continued to make a difference on our goals around sustainability. And we know that it's really because of organizations like Corporate Knights that we're able to do things like this, that we see organizations support our goals around financial stability, of course, but also around environmental sustainability. And that's important during COVID-19 as it is at any time. So we know as a government that more needs to be done, that the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures needs to be implemented more broadly, and that green finance has a long way to go in our country. But I think that this is an important step. And I think we should really celebrate the work of Corporate Knights in pushing forward the agenda and making sure that we actually take initiatives like this in business, but also as a government. It requires people pushing forward on these sorts of issues to make progress. We think that this sort of approach to having climate-related financial disclosures provides a consistent way for investors and stakeholders to see how a company views its resilience to climate change. And through that, we know that the market will help us to make the kind of decisions that we need to make to get to a more sustainable future. We're seeing this around the world, that more investors are pricing these issues, these factors into their decision making, and we want to use this opportunity to make sure that Canada stays, if not in the forefront, as best we can, pushes forward on these sorts of issues. And we hope, and in this case, we think that we might be setting the pace for countries as we go through this. I was on a call recently with the IMF and the World Bank, where they were really looking at what we had done in this regard and trying to push it out to other countries as they think about the kinds of steps they might need to take as they go through the pandemic and help their organizations. So we will continue to do this. The expert panel on sustainable finance in Canada that provided a set of actions needed to bring sustainable finance into the mainstream is an important part of our agenda as a government. We've already moved forward on some of these issues with crown corporations, And, you know, we know that Corporate Knights made an important contribution to our panel as we looked at how we can best move forward. We believe that Canada has the sort of expertise and innovation to move forward. I think our expert panel, one of the things they thought about most was that because of our capability in the financial sector and our capability in the energy sector, we bring together a perspective that is unique and one that can help us to be a leader in the charge towards investors understanding the importance of climate resilience. So what I can tell you from our government standpoint is, as we face the challenges over the next coming months, we're not going to forget our longer term goals, our goals around meeting our Paris targets and our stated goal of getting to net zero by 2050. We know that one of the things we've seen over the last few months is we do have the capability to come together and do really challenging things. I mean, we never would have imagined the federal government could have turned on a dime to deliver checks to 8 million people at the pace that we did. And it shows that faced with a challenge, we very much can get to solutions, even complex solutions. And I think that should give us insights into how we can move forward on other complex challenges. And there probably is not a more complex challenge than dealing with the climate crisis that we're facing as a planet. So we think that we need to very much think about how we build back in a way that makes sense as we do build back. And that's the kind of work we'll be doing after we get through this restart phase into the recovery phase of our economy. We'll be thinking that we need to ensure that we keep goals such as climate sustainability in our sights, and making sure that our economy builds back in a way that is fair for those that are particularly challenged. And we've seen many of those people during the course of this pandemic are particularly challenged and would not have been able to get through it without significant government support. So we'll be looking for opportunities. I'm anxious to hear insights from the companies and the representatives that are here tonight to help in guiding us along our way. And finally, I just want to say again, congratulations to all those being celebrated. I'm sorry we're doing it without a glass of champagne, but I hope that glass of champagne will come in the not too distant future, when I hope and expect we will get together in a safe way to celebrate achievements and path the chart forward for all of us. So thanks for having me here tonight, and I'm looking forward to hearing the rest of the participants on the panel.
Thank you very much, Minister, for being with us and kicking off proceedings this evening. We appreciate everything you've done. We're going to now, I think, hopefully get to that best 50 corporate citizens video, Toby.
Welcome to the 19th Annual Corporate Knights Best Corporate Citizen Gala. Thanks to our 2020 Gala sponsors, Deloitte and Bullfrog Power. We're here to celebrate the best in corporate citizenship, companies that are setting the standard for clean capitalism. Using 21 key performance indicators, we score each company against their industry peers to rank and showcase 50 of Canada's best corporate citizens. The goal, shine a light on those who are leading the way and inspire business as a force for good. Together, our best 50 companies employed 729,000 people at a median salary of $103,000 per year, paying $73 billion in cash taxes to support our public services. And in alignment with the Sustainable Development Goals set out by the UN, we generated $92 billion in clean revenue sales.
Thank you very much. There is more, but we don't have time for more this evening. So as I've mentioned already, this is linked tonight to the series we've been running. We've held 7 discussions around different possible aspects of that building back strategy. And those are all available to you if you want to go into the details on those. But we now have a brief video that is going to summarize, if that's possible, in about a minute, where we got to in those 7 sessions. So we have a second video now, please.
In 2020, a global pandemic struck. Some said taking care of the climate was a luxury we could no longer afford. Many leaders did not agree. There was a strong movement to rekindle the Canadian economy by building back better.
We need to seize this moment to be creative about how we reposition the national economy.
Resilience is so critical, and I think takes on even broader meaning when you have a pandemic.
With regards to COVID-19, we can have that same level of mobilization to tackle these very important climate change issues as well.
Instead of dismissing climate change, these leaders decided to embrace the opportunities by trying something different. As a result, millions of people found work in the green economy. In the first year alone, over 350,000 jobs were created, setting Canada on the path to becoming one of the most prosperous countries on the planet. None of this could have happened without the courage of the government and creativity of businesses who seized the day. Companies flying the maple leaf have proven that a new economic formula can power prosperity while protecting the planet. It started when our largest investors, led by pension funds and real estate, redirected their capital to power a green renovation wave. It made our homes and workplaces more comfortable and cheaper to run, built out the electricity transmission and charging networks needed to electrify the economy, all the while earning attractive returns for Canadian pensioners. We reimagined our resource industry to become the global suppliers of choice for lightweight carbon fibers, clean hydrogen, low carbon economy materials, and renewable jet fuels. Our rich mineral deposits and petrochemical industry produced billions of batteries to become the leading manufacturer of state-of-the-art zero-emission trucks and buses. Using low-carbon methods free of expensive inputs, farmers and food suppliers blend the best tradition of our ancestors with modern technology to nourish people and the planet. Millions of hectares of green forests were planted and protected in partnership with Indigenous forest guardians, creating a new set of lungs and fresh air for the planet. The Maple Leaf economic model is now taught in schools around the world. And all it took was investing a little less than 1% of our GDP, working with provinces and municipalities to keep the momentum going. To those who made it possible.
Today, the future market is predicted at $212 billion by 2030 for carbon fibers. And the bitumen we find in Canada is absolutely perfect raw material from which to take those carbon fibers. In Alberta alone, $84 billion of new markets that are clean.
I recently built a 150 megawatt wind farm for 3 Mi'kmaq communities in the Gaspé Coast, and our partner told us that it was the best project that they had because it was done in collaboration with the Indigenous communities, and it gave them the best project.
Thank you so much. That hopefully gives you a sense of the things we talked about and the sense of the possibilities for Canada going forward. So I'm now going to pass you over to Toby Heaps, who of course is the brains behind Corporate Nights, who's going to describe the commitments or the letter that has been signed by several of the leaders with us tonight.
Thanks, Diana, and thanks, Minister. And also I'd like to thank Her Honor Lieutenant Governor Elizabeth Dowdeswell, who's joined us. First of all, I'd just like to say I'm sorry again, like the Minister said, we're not in person, but I'd really like to congratulate everybody. Heartfelt congratulations. It's not easy leading the charge for a more sustainable world, the Clean Capitalist charge, especially in the middle of a pandemic. And you almost every one of you has been stepping up to the plate, doing remarkable things for your companies, for your employees, for your communities, and for our country. So really thankful for all your leadership there. In terms of what Diana was talking about in that video is sort of a newscast from 2030 of the Canada we could have. And it's interesting when you think about an economy, you know, what makes an economy go around. Of course, there's finance and technology, but at the most basic level, it's about the Maslow's hierarchy: shelter, food, and fuel. And when you look at what people want, where the global growing demand is in those three vectors: shelter in terms of people want more comfortable, more cost-effective homes and workplaces, more energy efficient. People want sustainably produced, healthy food. You look at fuel, they want clean energy, they want cost-effective and affordable energy. And then you look at the assets that we have in this wonderful country of ours, and you look how rich we are, and it's like we've won the lottery. We have every right to play to win on a global stage in these large growing markets for green buildings, for sustainable energy, and for sustainable mobility, and for sustainable food. And we have some of the world's leading companies that have been doing a lot of innovation and could really take it up a notch. And I think there's been a real change in attitude, a market change in attitude in corporate Canada, I would say, just in the last couple of years. Not that we were not coming from a place of leadership, but there's been a step change in terms of the openness from companies across sectors, from the energy sector, mineral sector, financial sector, some of the things that the minister touched upon with the expert panel to help to recalibrate our financial sector to really finance the sustainable economy. And this sea change has happened at the same time that we've had this pandemic pause, this opportunity to reflect. And as we come out of it, we're likely, the minister will be doing hard work over the summer with his staff, and we'll be coming up with some kind of an economic recovery program. And likely it will be the largest public investment that we will see in our generation going into the economy. And the choices we make will have a big impact on what direction we take and whether we really seize this opportunity. And it's interesting, if we can really take a bold green recovery, there's a tremendous chance for our country to create a lot of jobs in the short term and a lot of prosperity in the long term. About a third more jobs in the short term if we're using the multipliers from the International Energy Agency and McKinsey, particularly from the sort of retrofit building upgrade class. So huge opportunity, I think, for us to go forward, but it's going to take leadership from government and creativity from business. And when those two come together, magical things can happen. So we put out a call to many of you here with us tonight, and we asked if you would support asking the government and also yourselves to lead by example for this bold green recovery. And we're really heartened with the response. I think over 40 of you who are here with us have signed on, representing over 200,000 employees and over $140 billion of revenues from across sectors from across the country. So really thank you for your support. And we'll be sharing this letter with the minister in the coming day. And if anybody would like to join who hasn't already joined, please feel free to get in touch. And again, congratulations. And in terms of the Indigenous land acknowledgement that has become customary at our functions in corporate Canada, we've decided not to do that today, but to instead invite each one of you to think really carefully and hard, and some of you doing tremendous things already, about how you can better integrate, more fully integrate Indigenous businesses into your procurement policies. And so with that, I'd just like to do a toast with my quarantini water here to everybody, and cheers to your leadership and courage. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Toby. And again, thank you to all the leaders who are here. I mean, this is a fascinating time that we find ourselves in. It's a very difficult time, but a fascinating time when everyone is reconsidering. And the thing I hear most regularly is that the pandemic has accelerated many of the trends that were already underway, whether it's around digitalization or other aspects of the business world. And Toby's already alluded to, and the minister did too, the great work that has been done, but also the great task that we have ahead of us. The people who are on this panel are all part of the Best 50 Corporate Citizens. They've already been recognized. They're in the group of those who are doing good. But when I spoke to them earlier on, I asked them to consider two questions, and that's what we're going to discuss now. And one is, what opportunities does Canada have to do more in this space? And I do think we need to consider that in the light of what other countries are doing. This is an opportunity for Canada. It is certainly a possibility that if we don't do more in this space, we'll be left behind by people. I mean, the European Green Deal, for example, is really raising the bar in this area. And Germany is already spending about 40% of its investment on sustainability initiatives, whether it's net zero vehicles or having a clear hydrogen strategy and the like. So it's both an opportunity, but also there is a risk of not doing enough and being left behind and not being able to show that video in 2030. We want to be learning about the green maple leaf, not the green European stars, I think. Or perhaps we all want to do it together. I should say that, because it's not for the globe. We all need to do it. Anyway, with that introduction, I'm going to pass, first of all, to Don Lindsay, who of course is CEO of Teck Resources. And tell us, Don, what you're doing and what you think the opportunities could be.
Okay, well, thank you, Diana. And I want to start by saying congratulations, Toby. That's an awesome video, a great vision. And congratulations to you and the whole Corporate Knights team for not only this year's Best 50 Awards, but all the work that you do in supporting responsible economic development, and we're delighted to work with you. And thank you, Minister Morneau, for your remarks and what you've done to contribute to providing protection for the millions of Canadians that really need it and stick handling us through this economic recovery. I think Canada has some significant advantages that we can leverage going forward to both build back the economy while at the same time supporting the world's transition to a cleaner, lower carbon future. And speaking from the industry that I come from, you know, Canada's blessed with significant mineral resources, including materials that are essential for low carbon technologies like batteries and electric vehicles. And importantly, our mining industry in Canada has one of the smallest carbon footprints globally. As we emerge from this economic lockdown, there's some incredible opportunities for both the clean economy and then what I describe as healthcare resilience. I want to cite two specific examples for your question, Diana. First is ongoing advancement for battery technology, particularly the new technologies like zinc air batteries that can improve storage capacity and make renewable power, like what you see pictured behind me in terms of solar panels, or wind power as well, make them applicable 24 hours a day, where we really maximize the efficiency, and they can go to so many different places in the country and be very, very valuable. And that will drive new demand for metals in Canada too, but really, that storage is so crucial to really maximize the benefit from solar and from wind. The second example is about making our cities and communities future pandemic resistant. Some of you may be aware that copper is a natural antimicrobial substance, and it kills microbes, including COVID-19 on contact. COVID-19 dies within 2 hours on a copper surface, but it lives for days and days on stainless steel or wood or cardboard. And we've sponsored some cutting edge research. We've got it into 5 hospitals across Canada now in terms of intensive care units where it can really make a difference. But it can go into public infrastructure like rapid transit, and even Toyota, when they announced they were reopening their plants, they coated all their railings in copper just to make everybody safer. And I think the governments and corporations like ourselves can really work together to put that in place. So those are a couple of suggestions, Diana, going forward.
Thank you so much, Don. Moving on now to Rola Dagher, who's from Cisco, and I should give her credit for being Canada's top, or representing Canada's top international corporate citizen for the 2nd year in a row. So Rola, what about Cisco? What about connectivity? How does that play in?
Oh, thank you, Diana. We're honored and blessed to be the second winner for the International Corporate Citizen, and congratulations to all. And I think it's awesome that Toby touched on it. Diana, you summed it up by saying accelerating digital transformation. No one could have imagined that things that were going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years would happen in literally 3 months. I tell you that from what we've done at Cisco with the technology, because technology right now, it's at the foundation of everything we're doing because it's impacting human progress. We took the route of actually purpose and impact versus just profit. So what we did is we went out there and we served the community in a big way in terms of mental health, because it is huge right now in terms of the impact that's having on people, and you touched on it, the ministers touched on it as well. We also went to the underserving community and connected the unconnected. We also have over 20,000 kids in the Indigenous community that are connected through our Connected North program, but we still have a lot more to do. I could tell you that right now, in terms of what we need to do, is 3 things. We need to focus on on better infrastructure, because there is so many Canadians right now that don't even have the basic connectivity. Number one. Number two is using technology that is securely connected, because the word secure, it's so important to everything that we need to do. It's not just putting a service, it's knowing that you are securing that connectivity for your employees, your stakeholders and shareholders, and also add a little bit of a color and diversity in boardrooms, executive boardrooms, and at the executive level, as we're seeing right now. So the struggle that we're all going through today is the power that we all have to make a difference in the new Canada and what we need to see.
Thank you so much, Rola. That's fantastic work you're doing with those communities. Nobody can live without that connection effectively, or nobody can engage in the economy effectively anymore. Now we're going to move to Michael McCain. Tell us about the food system and how that can change.
Thank you, Diana. Appreciate it, and Toby, and thank you, Corporate Knights, for hosting the event and having us together this evening. It's a remarkable testament to all the people who are participating, and really appreciate being here with you this evening. Maple Leaf Foods was in the eye of the storm, if you will, through the COVID-19 tragedy. We were designated as critical infrastructure and an essential service. It's been said that any society is only 3 meals away from revolution, and I think the designation as an essential service was appropriate in this circumstance. Through all of that, we were very grateful that we were stable and secure, and gratitude, I think, is certainly appropriate, because so many others didn't experience that. Through this, there were 3 absolute convictions that we've had through the history of our organization that I think served us well in creating that resilience. Number one is the strength of our company values that are permeated across the enterprise. Number two, our deep belief in the principles and the ethos of shared value, creating value for all of our stakeholders, and explicitly rejecting the primacy of shareholder value in that context, which in the middle of a pandemic like this is so critically important. And then finally, our very clear and very explicit articulation of the vision of Maple Leaf, which is to become the most sustainable protein company in the world, which included in 2019 becoming the first large-scale food company and certainly meat company in the world to be carbon neutral today, now. All of these things served us incredibly well through 2019. We think they're good examples for others in the food system around the world. Certainly, there are other food systems that were much more fragile than ours. We think it serves as a good example, and I think it'll be an even greater example of some of the principles of leadership that need to be applied as we tackle now the ongoing and more enduring challenges of sustainability going forward, and the impact they have on our food supply. So thank you for having us this evening, and enjoy the conversation.
Thank you for joining us, Michael. And that's an impressive achievement to be carbon neutral now. Obviously, Canada has adopted the net zero by 2050 goal, and working that into this recovery is essential. So thank you for your leadership in that space. Another area that's absolutely critical to these difficult times is the insurance and financial services industry. So I'm going to ask now Rob Westling from the Cooperators to tell us what's going on in his space.
Thank you, Diana. Minister, Toby, and to all the panelists, thank you all for your leadership in building a sustainable Canada and a sustainable world. COVID-19 did not change the world. It's simply given us a lens, a clear lens, into the risks that our society is exposed to. And we have a real opportunity to build our economy back better. And I hope that in part, this will mean building in resilience. Since the pandemic hit Canada's shores, there have been 2 major natural disasters that were completely predictable and mitigatable. In Fort Mac, a well-known floodway flooded. It destroyed homes and businesses that were rebuilt there after the 2016 wildfire. In the Calgary area, a hailstorm caused billions of dollars of damage to asphalt roofs and vinyl siding that was replaced after a similar storm in 2014. The stark reality is that if we don't invest in the resilience of our communities, the cost of these risks will become untenable in our lifetime. For the cooperators, building back better means investing in flood defenses, investing in urban forest interface management. It means investing in building upgrades that reduce carbon emissions and increased climate change resiliency. At the cooperators, we are ready and willing to put our expertise and our capital to work to make it happen. And we hope that you are too. Diana, thank you.
Thank you. That echoes so well the statement we saw from Minister McCain in the opening video about the importance of making sure we change our ways through this to support resilience going forward. Also on the issue of resilient infrastructure, we have Melissa Kennedy, Executive Vice President, Chief Legal Officer and Public Affairs at Sunlight Financial. Melissa, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Diana and Toby and Minister, for your thoughtful comments. I'm also the executive sponsor for sustainability, and so on behalf of my colleagues, thank you for the honor and congratulations to my colleagues on the panel. For us, we're looking at it from an investment point of view, which is one of the pieces of our sustainability platform. We have over $1 trillion of assets under management, and as we think about reopening the economy, we believe it must include building a more resilient one. We are necessarily long-term investors because of the business we're in, and that necessarily means having an ESG or sustainability focus. We know from experience you cannot have top performance in your investments over time and ignore such considerations as climate change, social justice, or governance. We're not alone in that regard. As been previously mentioned, Canada's financial sector are already investors in green buildings and low carbon infrastructure. So we believe these are two areas that are poised for significant growth. For example, we already have invested billions in infrastructure, and most of our investments are in Canada, but there's no reason why we can't invest more. And as their example is being an advisor to the National Task Force for Resilient Recovery that will be delivering specific recommendations in the coming weeks. We believe that sustainable investing will be in even greater demand as we open up, because these investments actually outperformed others during this crisis. The thinking that it's an either-or paradigm, that economic development must come at the expense of climate change, social justice, or governance is yesterday's thinking. And we believe, and I know as we reopen the economy, that Canada, with its stable governments and thoughtful leadership at all levels, which is a key ingredient for infrastructure investing. We kind of assume that every country in the world is like us, but they're not. We believe Canada is optimally placed to take advantage of building a cleaner and more resilient economy.
Thank you so much, Melissa. Hearing everyone's conviction around this issue is really heartening, because we all need to work together on these issues. I'm now going to turn to Gord Hicks, who is a veteran of these webinars. He was on one of the earlier ones. He's in the real estate services and management business, absolutely critical to the energy usage of buildings, etc. So Gord, tell us your thoughts.
Well, Diana, firstly, I'd like to also congratulate Toby on this virtual gala and thank him for all his leadership in this space. And of course, thank you, Minister Morneau, for your support of this critical area for our economic recovery. And congratulations to all of the panelists and corporate leaders that have been leading their businesses into a sustainable future and really leading the way for their respective industries, something that ultimately will pay dividends for our future generations. BGIS, firstly, is Canadian headquartered, and we're a global leader in the provision of integrated facilities management services. We proudly employ 5,000 Canadians, many of which work very closely together to support our clients in the financial services, in the telecommunications, as well as in various other retail spaces, so that their essential services could continue through the COVID pandemic. We also partner and employ thousands and hundreds of thousands of other Canadians through subcontracted services, and many of those were on the front lines in the form of cleaners and other things. We really do appreciate all of our partners and partnerships in support of this great country. I would like to see the implementation of a green recovery, in the sense that from a buildings perspective, there is a tremendous opportunity to invest for our future and benefit Canadians through this investment of funds in 4 key ways. Firstly, energy retrofit stimulus project funding would incentivize building owners to prioritize capital for energy retrofits across their real estate portfolios. This, of course, would reduce their operating costs while reducing their carbon footprints, and ultimately enhance their own brand and image, and create greater business and operating resiliency for their respective businesses. This, of course, would make them more competitive and allow them to grow in their respective sectors and hire more Canadians in their respective sectors. So the second area is around energy retrofit investments, creating thousands of jobs in the real estate sector. There are literally tens of billions of dollars of opportunity in Canada for investment over the next 5 years to green our buildings, to make them more energy efficient. For every $1 billion invested, there's about 13,000 jobs created. Further, for every $1 invested in energy retrofits, there's $4 to $5 of GDP growth. The third key area where Canadians can benefit is through creating domestic demand for Canada's building clean tech sector. We've got a tremendous area of expertise in this sector, and hundreds of companies that are innovating. We've really got to support those organizations in implementing their great technologies into our buildings, creating referrals and business cases for these companies so that we can prepare them for export. And ultimately, this is another area that we can position Canadians for the future. This is going to be a multi-trillion-dollar market opportunity globally over the next 10 years. And to position our clean tech companies to be able to attack that opportunity is something that I feel we cannot miss. And then finally, by encouraging and accelerating investment in energy efficiency retrofits, in Canada, we can reduce our GHG emissions significantly. We can, in the building sector, we're responsible for 35% of GHG emissions approximately. This would reduce the capacity, increase the capacity on our grids so that we could electrify transportation. And there's another area of significant opportunity for economic opportunity and growth. So with that said, I really encourage the government to think about making investing in the building sector a priority as we look at economic stimulus for the COVID recovery. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Still staying in the same sector, I'm going to move now to Natalie Paladichev, who's the CEO of Ivanhoe Cambridge, real estate investment side. So how does that resonate with you, Natalie?
Thank you. A lot of pressure to speak after the veteran of this panel tonight. So it's great to see this diversified representation of the economic landscape, because I really believe that this is a union of our strength, which could lead us to success and make a difference. So I think that it's really a beautiful floor that I have in front of me tonight. tonight. So as a real estate company, we are the real estate arm of the CDPQ here in Montreal. We have, of course, a lasting positive impact on the communities we invest in. And it's really at the core of our purpose as a company. We have the strong conviction that we need to invest sustainably for long-term financial performance, because we believe that what is sustainable is going to be profitable. And I think that those two words, which would not used to be put together, should be put together more and more. That is why, among many other initiatives, we will aim for achieving a net zero carbon portfolio by 2050. As far as our industry is concerned, Canada has really the opportunity to lead in shaping real estate for tomorrow. And that's why I want to thank you all tonight for the recognition of our efforts in this industry.
Thank you. I think I should point out that Canada has 12 of the top 50 largest real estate investors in the world. This is really a strength for the country.
Definitely, we should use that. And I think it's, you know, when you walk around the world and travel with this beautiful brand, Canadian brand, I can tell you that it helps a lot.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for the part that you play in that, Natalie.
Sure.
Moving on now to transport, we have Nadeem Velani, who's the CFO of Canadian Pacific. How can the railways contribute to our future, and what opportunities do you see?
Sure. Thank you, Diana, and thank you, Toby and Minister, for your leadership. CP is a 139-year-old company that played a critical role in building Canada. It's the first time we've been part of this esteemed group of corporate leaders, and we're quite honored and proud to be recognized for our sustainability journey. I think during the pandemic, it's been very evident that maintaining resiliency in our global supply chains has been critical to North America's effective response and will be critical to the recovery and building back better. Our CP family has consistently delivered in the face of COVID, and the pride in CP has only grown, as has our adaptability and resolve to perform under dynamic and difficult conditions, the food, grain, and medical supplies needed during these challenging times. CP is committed to its sustainability journey, fully supports the Corporate Knights statement on building back better, and stands ready to confront the challenges and seize the opportunities as we build a more resilient and green North American economy for the future. We are fortunate in Canada to have the most efficient railroad in the industry. We believe transportation of freight by rail will continue to play an integral role in a low carbon economy, and CP is transitioning to be a leader in this transformation. Since 1990, CP has made significant improvements to our fuel efficiency. We've reduced our greenhouse gas emissions intensity by 43%. While we are proud of this accomplishment, we acknowledge that fuel efficiency improvements alone are not enough, and we are looking for emerging technologies, renewable fuels, partnerships, and innovative ways of running our business to unlock additional possibilities. Our sustainability practices reflect that we are focused on keeping our momentum as a safe and efficient railroad that moves the economy and does our part to drive the economy forward, ever stronger, more resilient, and sustainable for future generations. You got to keep in mind, we're the backbone of the economy. We touch, you know, what Don described earlier. You know, he's our largest customer, and having a more efficient supply chain, getting things from A to B that much more efficiently is better for everyone. It makes it Canada more competitive as a whole, allows our customers to be more efficient in their marketplace and be global leaders.
Thank you. These are all parts of the puzzle that we obviously clearly need. So, Minister, I hope you're paying attention. We're going to move now to move west, and we're going to talk to Martha Hall-Findlay from Suncor. We had, on a previous event, we had the CEO of Suncor, we had Mark Little with us, who was very fulsome in his description of the changes that needed to be made in the industry and the opportunities for the industry to be part of a sustainable future and to move out of some of the problem areas and into new areas. So Martha, you are in charge of sustainability for Suncor. What can you add to that?
Well, first, thank you, Diana, and Suncor is really pleased to be included in the list of this august group of companies again this year. And just a shout out, Toby, to you and Corporate Knights for the great work that you do. So thank you for that. And Diana, you asked, you know, what can we do and what are the opportunities? And I would say, I think that everyone on this call knows that the opportunities, particularly for Canada, are huge. They're extraordinary. But they're even more extraordinary if we can build on our existing strengths. And, you know, you had Dawn talking earlier, you have, you know, a recognition that resources of all kinds, for example, have been incredibly important to Canada's historical prosperity. That's a strength that we can build on, not just because of know-how, because of what we do, but also the economic heft of a number of these sectors in Canada. So really, really well positioned to in fact be participants in, investors in what will be needed for that kind of transition. And I look at just before I joined Suncor at the end of 2019, Petro-Canada finished building the electric highway, in effect. You can drive coast to coast, not coast to coast, but at least coast to coast, entirely in an electric car, because you can go they're no further than 200 kilometers apart. That's a strength. You have a coast to coast retail system of selling gasoline. Now we can actually sell electricity. And where that is really important is in providing customers with the choices that they need to make. Because of course, you know, a barrel of oil, 80% of the greenhouse gas emissions come from its use. And so if we as a company can play in that opportunity of providing our customers the choice that they need to make to be able to make that kind of a difference, that's fantastic. And I would just, a final piece, I think if anything, COVID has really reinforced the need and the opportunity for collaboration between business and government, between business and business. All of the shared learnings, those of us who were essential parts of the essential services, the things that we were able to learn, how we can impart that, how we can share that, and for sure, Minister Morneau, thank you so much for everything that you and the government have been doing. But it's the collaboration. I never say no to the financial piece, but the collaboration piece is going to be really, really important. And certainly Suncor and Petro-Canada, we're really looking forward to participate.
Thank you, Martha. You make a really important point there about pulling together, and I think that is something that Canada is also rather good at. And the commitment that we've had from ministers on pretty much all the calls that we've hosted has been very impressive. And the ability of you guys to work together and share ideas, I think, is perhaps stronger there than where I'm currently sitting, which is in London, England, where we perhaps don't have such a collaborative relationship. And I think that is consequential for the future in this country. Anyway, moving on from that. So we have another veteran now. We have Marcelo Liu, who's the president of BASF Canada, an international corporate citizen, and who also participated in one of our previous events. So welcome back, and please share your ideas with us, Marcelo.
Thank you, Diana. Thank you, Toby. Thank you, Minister, for being here. And again, humbled to be part of the group here speaking tonight. I think it's very clear, a lot of people have mentioned that this is a lifetime opportunity. There is a big reset, and we're talking now how to recover from this big reset. I think Toby's video was very clear that we were behind in a couple areas, and COVID, if anything, has really put to the surface some of the big issues that we had, not only in the environment, but also in society in general. But I think, again, where Toby mentioned, and I think many of us have just agreed, is that Canada is a very fortunate place. I am a visitor to Canada, and I can say Canada has a lot of the things that you need a collection of countries to have. Not only that, it has a very good dialogue and consultation with government, which it doesn't happen everywhere in the world, so I can attest to that as well. On the resource side, I think Canada, again, it is behind to, I think, none. We are in the chemical sector, but by being in the chemical sector, we are intermediates to many, many different industries. And from the food area, where Canada is really feeding the world and needing the supply chain to work, to be able to export all the food that is so vital globally, to health and nutrition, but and the energy that it was mentioned, how hydrogen is going to be a big one, and how to make that carbon neutral. I think Alberta Innovates in your video was talking about how to use bitumen in another way, and that can be with carbon fiber that go into the mobility sector, but also activated carbon that goes into many different areas that you apply chemistry. So you're able to do chemistry there. Sorry, my Google clock is going off. On electrification, the battery system, Canada really has a great potential to power the world. Yeah, it has all the ingredients needed to make batteries. So I'll end by saying, back to what a minister mentioned, that is really time to put figures where figures are due. We need to be able to say that we have a good profit and loss statement, but at the same time say that we are doing good for the society and the environment. We are trying to work on that on a value balancing alliance similar to what we do in Europe. And we really ask that the government create a certainty, transparency on the regulatory environment side for us to be able to invest and grow. And finally, the corporations need to put their money where their mouth is to make it happen. Yeah? So I thank you for that.
Thank you for being with us. I noticed that we're turning at the top of the hour. We normally try and finish within an hour, but I'm afraid tonight we're going to go on a little bit further because we've got some great people still to hear from. So please, those of you who are with us, thank you for being with us. Give me a few more minutes to go through our final speakers. The next one of whom
Morneau, can I just say thank you so much for having me, and congratulations again to the corporations who are acting in such an important leadership role. I'm going to have to sign off now, but I think we're all in this challenging time together, and I think as we face up to the next set of challenges, it's great to know that we have so many private sector citizens and corporations that are going to make such a huge difference. So thanks again, and I really appreciate being here tonight.
Thank you very much, Minister.
Take care.
Greatly appreciate it. So we will, with that, just move briefly on. So we've got Brian Bentz next, who's CEO of Alectra, a power company. Brian?
Thanks, Diana, and thanks, Toby, for putting this virtual event together and shining the spotlight on this very important topic. At Alectra, we recognize the importance that we play, as well as others within the electricity sector, in addressing climate change and supporting and being a critical infrastructure catalyst for the bold green recovery. Even before COVID, the transitional and traditional utility business model, it was being disrupted by numerous global trends and events. And recognizing these trends, Alectra established what we called a Green Energy and Technology Center, effectively an innovation hub called the Great Center, a collaborative hub working with our customers, our partners, where ideas for smarter, more efficient green technology solutions can be accelerated for commercialization, incubation, and acceleration. Alectra's Great Center, we believe, is well positioned to support a bold green recovery in this ever-changing landscape. We continue to focus on customer value, and that includes electric vehicle infrastructure and integration into the power grid, and enhancing electrification of buildings. This will ultimately allow a new vision to emerge, a new energy economy where we will see more distributed energy resources downstream on the grid, behind the meter generation, e-mobility connectivity, and microgrids seamlessly working together to produce a more efficient, low carbon, digitized grid. And the power grid will become the platform for that new green emerging energy economy. And I believe Canada can become a leader in ideation and innovation, build this new technology and export it to the world and market it to the world. With greater support, these technologies could be advanced at a more rapid pace accelerating decarbonization and addressing the climate crisis, while also empowering our customers, giving them more choice, and benefiting the communities and the world around us. So once again, thank you for the opportunity. I'd like to congratulate all of my colleagues here today and appreciate the recognition. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brian. It is, you know, you provide the backbone that most of us rely on. So thank you for your role in that and for greening it as you go. Anthony Haynes is CEO of Toronto Hydro. Anthony, do you have any thoughts to add to Brian's?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Perhaps just a couple of points that we're beginning to hear some themes here, but there's a couple of things I would like to add. Although the minister has left the call, I think it's worthwhile recognizing that one of the real unique things that I've observed is the way that our governments have worked together. And I think we've commented already around, there have been cases where governments haven't worked together so well. And I think it's something that as Canadians, we can really point to prove that we are a country where you can invest your funds safely and knowing that governments are always looking out for each other. So I do believe it's something that makes us proud Canadians, if you will. I want to not necessarily focus too much on what Toronto Hydro's doing. Brian has spoken well about some things going on already, but I want to perhaps talk a little about opportunities. Starting with just a quick couple of facts, we've got one of the greenest carbon-free grids in the world. It's something like 90% of our generation is carbon-free. That truly makes us unique on a global scale when you factor in that it's also price competitive. Very unusual on a global scale. Do you get the combination of price and carbon being balanced, if you will? And so in Canada, we've got one of the cheapest deliverable costs of electricity, and it's one of the greenest. So that truly has to be seen as an opportunity. I want to just quickly then talk about some of the things going on that I don't want to miss the opportunity around. We've spoken about electric vehicles. I think almost everybody has mentioned that. But one of the things that I feel like I want to add to that conversation is that electric vehicles actually have a unique circumstance around them, whereby they actually benefit the electricity companies in that they allow, you know, really more throughput on our systems, and so fixed cost systems are spread over a larger group. They have a great economics to the customer, and here in Ontario, with really quite a clean green, it also has a massive environmental footprint benefit. In fact, I often say that the savings from an electric vehicle will pay for your entire electricity bill for the year. So you want free electricity? Buy an electric car. It sounds crazy, but that's the way the arithmetic works. And so when we think about the environment and fossil fuels being a third of the contributor, surely now is the time to take advantage of that technology. The other thing that's going on that's quite remarkable is building growth. Here in Toronto, we've got something like 150 condos under construction that exceed 50 stories high. That's more than anywhere else in North America. What was unusual about that, I suppose, is last fall we had 300 new applications come in. So we've got to deal with this issue of getting their fuel choices right now, because those are decisions that will be 50-year decisions. So we've got an abundance of cheap, green electricity. Surely this is the time to think about different energy choices, solutions in these buildings. And then finally, as if there's anything we've learned through this crisis, in fact, a funny little factoid for you is we've actually had more pandemics at Toronto Hydro than we've had electrical weather events. In other words, the number one risk to the electricity grid now is little viruses, not huge windstorms. And one of the things I would take from this one is the importance of buying Canadian, your supply chain. You know, we've really been pushed over the last decade or 2 decades into low cost is the only criteria that goes into procurement. I'm going to propose that we add now buying local for security of supply. So I see then the 3 opportunities are to convert, fuel choice for both vehicles and buildings, and buying Canadian products, making it here, I think makes sense again. So thank you very much.
We had a thank you, Anthony. We had a very interesting discussion around how to make sure that more of that vehicle supply chain, the electric vehicle supply chain, would be Canadian made. So that's definitely part of the program, we hope. Now, Christine, thank you for waiting. Christine Bergeron is Chief Member Services Officer at Van City, and perhaps can talk a little just about financing this recovery.
Thank you. Good afternoon from Vancouver. And also thanks to everybody on the panel for your leadership. And you know, we've been in good company for many years with many of you on these lists. So as many have mentioned, we believe that the crisis is certainly an opportunity to reset the country's assumptions, right? And to build a lower carbon economy that also provides job and wealth for more people. So that's why Van City is supporting Build Back Better. We believe a strong, prosperous economy really requires a strong local community and local communities across the country. So we're a member-owned, values-based financial institution, and so we've always put the needs of people and communities first, but we really believe that is more important now than ever. And so what's the opportunity from a green recovery perspective? So we think we do need to avoid some of the mistakes that followed the financial crisis in 2008, where, you know, as all of us here know, we did see an uneven recovery. And that meant there was growing job precarity, wealth inequality, and greater economic dependence on fossil fuels. And so in 2008, our response as a credit union was really to change our fundamental operating model. So we started to put as much emphasis on how we made the money and not just what we did with the profits. So for example, we became a living wage employer. We achieved carbon neutrality many years ago. We started to divest from our fossil economy and started to invest in more impactful companies. And then many years along the way, we also embedded reconciliation as a value. And so today, in response to this crisis, we've been accelerating a lot of that work to really advance the common good. And so we have been generating new products and solutions for members that will enable them to reduce their climate footprint. We've also been adjusting some of our products to really reach the segments of the economy that have traditionally been underserved. So really trying to think about the gaps in the economy and not simply what financial instruments could be available. And then we've been really leveraging our capital in a way to drive more equitable and sustainable recovery. And so we do think as well, we've been a leader in responsible investments for some time, and as other colleagues on the panel have said, I really think that Canada should be a leader in responsible investments more broadly. And then how can corporate Canada best contribute? Well, we know that the crisis demands an extraordinary response from all sectors, but banks and credit unions have an immediate role to play by deploying capital money quickly into local economies. And so we really think the financial sector can be more intentional in that sustainable recovery. So for us, that means thinking a little bit outside of the box and old ways of thinking. So when you think of ways of understanding risk and assessing, you know, in terms of sustainability and social purpose, and not only the traditional risk return metrics that we're all so accustomed to. So we're developing new products to really lean into these principles. And it's the same kind of thinking that actually led us to move to a 0% interest rate for credit cards during the pandemic for people who were really in a tricky situation. And so we're committed to keep going, and we're going to keep looking at that from the non-traditional lens, one that balances, you know, the need to make a profit over the long term, the sustainable profit, but with people and planet at the center. And so we really think we need to build a better economy than the one that existed before COVID-19. And we think that that will address inequality, and it's really about health and well-being of people and planet. And so that's our view as a financial institution.
Thank you so much, Christine, and apologies for keeping you to the end, but it was worth the wait.
Okay.
We've heard from all the corporate leaders, and I think what's impressive is the range of people behind this direction of travel, the whole economy moving together. The one side we haven't heard from really is the youth and the voice of tomorrow. So to close, we're going to hear from Maxime Lacat, who's founder and chair of the Canadian Business Youth Council for Sustainable Development, Canada's largest student initiative on sustainable business. Thank you, Maxime.
Bonjour à tous du Québec. Merci pour cette opportunité. It is an honor and privilege to be talking as a youth representative to all of you, the leaders who are transforming Canada's private sector to become more sustainable. But it is also an enormous responsibility, as I do not represent the diversity of perspectives and backgrounds among Canadian youth. To counter that, we assembled 20 youth organizations which represent over 200 young leaders from across the country, focusing on a large diversity of issues from climate finance to Indigenous rights and leadership, to create a short document filled with questions that we as young leaders feel are under-discussed in the corporate sustainability world, but are crucial to attaining a sustainable, prosperous, and socially just future within a generation. Two of the recurring fears that we hear in our youth circles and that led to the creation of this document include, first, despite having witnessed many of the great efforts in the past few years, including in some of your companies and the rest of the best 50 corporate citizens, we fear that we won't be transformational enough to achieve true climate and social justice. The second fear is that the current business elite is consciously and unconsciously reinforcing the problems that they seek to solve. And that comes partly from young leaders who want themselves to become the next generation of business leaders. Now, let me be honest, this document that we'll share with you in a second, some of the questions on it will make you feel uncomfortable. And that is the point. Because although some of the young leaders who were included in writing these questions, although they will be in power in 10 to 20 years, we don't have 10 to 20 years to start acting upon these harder questions. It will create uncomfortable change over the short term, but it will help us build the foundations to enact the necessary changes that need to happen to truly building back better a planet and a society. Now, please remember that it is our future that you are managing. So you have a responsibility to do better because we expect you to do so, but you also have a responsibility to include us in these conversations and share power with us because we don't want change for us without us. This is also an opportunity for you because the young leaders who contributed to this document were some of the most informed and involved youth in the country. So if you want to future-proof your business, start the conversation with us. And that is why we will open a call for roundtables between you, the best corporate citizens, and us, the youth organization who signed this document. So you can share the progress you have made in the next few weeks, in the next few months, following the internal review of this document with your sustainability teams. But you can also share the challenges you are facing when taking action upon some of these harder questions and ideas. So we can learn from you and we can build a more prepared next generation of sustainability leaders. Toby will be posting the link now in the chat, and I invite you all to open it to save it. We will also continue the conversation by email. Merci, and we look forward to starting this necessary conversation.
Thank you so much, Maxime, and thank you for bringing those groups, the ideas of the groups that you assembled into this conversation. I think we all need to be reminded that the sort of distant view of the future is probably not enough, and we do have to accelerate our thinking about how we can create sustainability. We've come to the end of our gala evening. Thank you for joining us, and apologies again for overrunning. Here we have the contact details obviously of Toby. If you want to add your name to the supporter list that he mentioned at the beginning of the event. And also if you want to access the synthesis report from this series of webinars, which was, as I said, sort of separate from, but ran into this corporate citizenship gala. So please do continue to engage on this issue. Please, if you're from a company that has not been mentioned tonight, please join in and make sure that you collaborate in the ways that we've talked about. and bring your employees along as well. This is an important time. We've been reminded in the chat window, the relationship between employees and companies is very important at the moment. And coming along together and making sure that all the right voices are heard in these discussions is critical. Finally, I'm going to turn to our last video, the best 50 video, which will continue, which you can also find on YouTube. So please do go there. Thank you again to everyone who's joined us. Congratulations for being in this great group. And let's get to work to build a better Canada for my return in 2 weeks' time, but for the future as well. Thank you.
It's Canada's 2020 Best 50 Corporate Citizens. And last but not least, our top 10 international corporate citizens, companies with major operations in Canada who are headquartered abroad.